Good evening to Amit ji.
Good evening, sir. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening to everyone who can see me.
Good evening. Good evening to everyone.
Pal sir को good evening.
कैसे हैं?
वही रफ्तार बेढंगी जो पहले थी वो अब भी है.
अब भी वही है, कुछ नया करिए सर.
चलिए सर, अच्छा लगा आप लोगों को देख के. ये बड़ा अच्छा सिस्टम है दुनियादारी.
Good evening, Paul sir.
गुड इवनिंग डॉक्टर अमित जी. गुड
Good
इवनिंग.
evening. Good evening.
Actually, today I have to go somewhere else. I just have got information. I was just forget it कि today is webinar, but I have registered.
That's why I told. That's why I told Anju.
No. I have not got any message from Anju. I am just informed by our PG student Sana. They informed me that, yeah, informed me that sir, you have to be.
Because I appointed two persons, Dr. Sana and Dr. Anju. So
Right,
it doesn't matter who called me, but you got
doesn't matter.
you,
It's okay, sir. Doesn't matter. आज
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. कैसे हैं बॉस?
Hello, Akshay.
Good evening, sir. It's really a great privilege for me, sir, to be with all of you once again, sir.
Thank you.
गुड इवनिंग डॉक्टर
अक्षय.
स्वामी जी. बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है आपको देख करके.
Thanks a lot, sir. Even I get a lot of inspiration and motivation from all of you, sir.
Akshay Swami is a very enthusiastic and energetic person. He is with us.
No doubt, sir.
No, it is the we have to feel proud that we are having such kind of personality in webinar.
Thanks a lot, sir. Even I get a lot of inspiration and motivation from all of you, sir.
I think. Good evening, Dr. Juhi Gupta ji. Dr. Juhi ji ko good evening. Can you hear my voice, Dr. Juhi?
Sir, should we start the program, sir? The hosting part, sir. It's 6:30, sir. Good evening, everybody.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
डॉक्टर जूही गुप्ता मैम जुड़ गई हैं कि नहीं अभी?
जी सर,
Hi.
जी मैं I'm there. Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay.
Good evening, everybody, honorable dignitaries, respected principal sir, respected Professor Dr. Vitnayak sir, Professor Dr. S.S. Pal sir, Professor Dr. V.P. Verma sir, and all the dignitaries who are present with us. And we are really glad and elated to tell that the State National Homeopathic Medical College and Hospital, Lucknow, India is organizing a virtual workshop from 24th to 26th September 2020. And what I know, the 3 days of this workshop is going to be very beneficial to all the students and to all the persons associated with homeopathic fraternity. Today, we have got some of the greatest speakers from all over the world in order to enlighten us. We are very glad to have the first session. And as we know, for today, we have our Honorable Dr. V.P. Verma sir for the moderator of this session. And of course, it's a great privilege for us to have you with us, sir. And in today's presentation, before we start the program, I would like to request the Tarun to kindly play the video, the introductory video of our program, so that our viewers will know about it. And I would also like to tell that our webinar coordinator, sir, Professor Dr. Amit Naik, sir, is a very dynamic, agile personality who keeps on working hard day and night for the upliftment of homeopathy. And though he was really busy in a lot of preoccupied work, but still he took out his time for 15 minutes for staying with us in the beginning of this program. Thanks a lot, sir, for your valuable time and presence. So now I would like to request Tarun to kindly play the video so that our viewers could know about us, our college, and the message that our principal sir wants to give us. Very soon a video will be played that is regarding our program about before we inaugurate the program, before we start the program. This video will give a message about our college, about the activities that we are doing and how we are promoting homeopathy at an international frame. Since we have been organizing a lot of programs in collaboration with Budapest, Hungary doctors, with the Ireland doctors, we had a lot of experiences with the expertise of other professors like Madam Kathy and all. And what I know, the 3 days will be the greatest days for the learning, for our own uplifting, and to understand that what homeopathy has got. So very soon, a beautiful video will be played for starting the program about this. Okay, so I think we are having a little bit of technical issue that will be resolved soon, and we will start the program. So I would like to introduce all of you to a very renowned speaker who is, she's known as the gem of Indian homeopathy, Professor Dr. Juhi Gupta, madam. She is a very dynamic personality and international speaker. She is professor in the Department of Human Physiology and Biochemistry at Government Homeopathic Medical College and Hospital, Bhopal. She has got great expertise in research methodology and biostatistics for PG Homeopathy since 2016. She is also the member governing body of National Institute of Homeopathy, Kolkata. She is a member advisory committee program quality assessment, Prasar Bharati Doordarshan, and she has been ex-member scientific advisor board, CCRH Ministry of Ayush, New Delhi, and she has got a lot of laurels, a lot of awards on her name, like Excellence in Service Award for remarkable contribution in the field of homeopathic teaching given by national organizations Chikitsa Sansar. I would like to request our honorable speaker, madam, to enlighten us with your presentation and to make us understand about your topic, that is redefining preventive healthcare with homeopathy. Madam, please.
A very good evening to all. Am I audible?
Yes, madam, you're audible.
Okay. So a very good evening to one and all. At the onset, I would like to thank the State Homeopathic Medical College, Lucknow, and Ontario University, Canada, for organizing this 3-day event. And as you can see, my topic today is something away from clinical practice, because I have been presenting a lot of papers and in webinars and seminars, conferences on clinical practice and the effect and role of homeopathy. But in today's times, there is a major concern of the ideology of preventive healthcare and how each medical system is going to share its responsibility, is going to be identified as workable in certain sectors, and does lead to a more defined holistic approach in preventive science. Now, why should I take or pick up a topic like preventive medicine? I would like to tell you that homeopathy has survived through epidemics. Homeopathy has proven its efficacy in epidemics, and it is the epidemic outbreak which has established the diversity of the homeopathic action, both as an en masse preventive, both as a treatment resort to specific conditions relating to people who are suffering in a higher degree, and thus finally as an individualized evolved system of medicine, which will be answering to each and every person depending upon the person's ability to respond to the natural laws. So that was the reason why I have picked up this topic of redefining preventive healthcare with homeopathy. Another point or another fact that prompted me to pick up this topic was that in our country, now we were under the British rule for a long period. And with the British, Portuguese, when they came to India, they bought the English medical system as a system of practice. And as a system of medical education, this science came to India with the English people in the first quarter of the 19th century, somewhere around 1830. But unfortunately, the coming in of this medical system led to the abolition of the existing medical infrastructure in our country. So this was a very, very unfortunate sequel of the entry of a modern medical science, which should have actually added up to the existing systems. But it was forcibly assured that the existing medical infrastructure should be demolished and the medical science which has come from the West should be accepted. So this is at the grassroots level a very, very wrong approach, because a science, a system which has evolved in my land is made for the people of my land, is designed as per the needs of the people of this country. And if those systems are demolished to establish a system which has taken birth in a very, very different perspective, on a very, very different lifestyle, mode, method, was a major loss to the existing medical system of our country. But anyways, it is a matter of history, and so we are all just spectators to this fact. You will be surprised to know that the government of India till the middle of the 20th century had all this public health and preventive health concept under the administrative department. It was not a health department issue. And neither was it a segment of the medical education, any of the medical educations. So it was in the year 1955 that it was proposed that a preventive and social medical department should be set up in medical colleges. And then again, it took few years to come up. But from the year 1960 till date, in 60 years, the parameter, the scope of this preventive and social and community medicine, now also adding up family medicine, has increased so much that it has become nearly the entire machinery of healthcare supportive system in our country. And before I start my talk, I'm giving you this background because most of us don't study preventive and social medicine. Nobody wants to read it. We straight away want to jump up to the clinical presentations and we want to deal with them. We want that this disease patient had come with these investigations and this was the result I delivered. But we fail to understand that a medical science or a medical system does not respond or does not answer to individuals who are visiting to the clinics and hospitals. These are systems for the masses, which ensure that the masses are healthy. And so we can pick up a handful of unwell people and give them the desired treatment. So this is a very, very important segment to analyze. The second segment, which is even more important to analyze, the first homeopathic medical college in India came up in 1881, the Kolkata Homeopathic Medical College. And it was in the year 1983 that the Central Council for Homeopathy established the acts and the rules and the regulations to streamline the homeopathic medical education. Maybe the activities were going on for last around 12 years, but shaping up happened somewhere in the later segment of the 20th century. So nearly we also have last 40 years with all this education, but homeopathy has not grown anywhere. And we have not put any efforts in developing our preventive and social, community and family healthcare machinery. And this is very unfortunate. Again, I come back to my first point. This is very unfortunate because it is the pandemics, it is the epidemics, it is the outbreaks that have given life to homeopathy. And if there were no epidemics, pandemics, outbreaks, endemic diseases, I don't know we would have survived or not. So we should be thankful that we have survived and grown. And today more than 80 countries of the world have a legislative approval of homeopathy. We all know it is the second largest system of medical practice, second largest system of medical acceptance globally, thanks to the English literature in which our text is written. Otherwise, I don't know where would have we stood. But in spite of all this, we have not created a concrete preventive and social medical system for homeopathy. What I look forward after my lecture is, after my talk is, that we all have to become the focus of developing this preventive healthcare infrastructure. And each homeopath can be a focus. And on a larger plane, the medical colleges, hospitals, state infrastructures, regional infrastructures, and national infrastructures should pick up this preventive ideology and carry it forward on a larger plane such that homeopathy gets identified as a system of preventive health care in so and so segments and with so and so limitations, so much results, so many promises, and this can be the road ahead. So this is an attempt to bring forth to all of us what is actually existing in this sector right now. What can we as homeopaths think of doing, and what is it that we are missing out? Each one of us is practicing. We all are, we are practicing in a very, very systematic manner. We have a huge community of patients. We have a huge community of students, followers. Now we also have a government support. We have a ministry. So if we look at the opportunity, this is the highest time to react, in my view. Before I go further, I would just give a 3 to 4 minute brief about the prophylactic approach of homeopathy, only because it is expected in a lecture on preventive healthcare. So we all know that homeopathy basically addresses the individual, and we try to remove all the barriers of health in an individual. And that method of dealing is most unique to homeopathy. And mostly we translate the person as a whole into our medicinal framework and consider a suitable medicine remedy for that person. If we talk about the preventive aspect, prevention in terms of treatment. See, diet is a part of every medical system, lifestyle is a part of every medical system, exercises, we also have massage, we also have magnetism, we have mesmerization, we have a lot of things, and many more systems have much more than us as well. But if we talk about the preventive part of the medicinal substances, so we know that in cases of large number of outbreaks, when at a point of time large number of people are affected and we have to administer certain medicine which is being identified in a very short span as a genus epidemicus, because it is being believed that the causative agent is very fast, the reaction is very uncontrollable, and we have to cater to a very large number of people. So we collect the symptoms from the larger group, and on the basis of symptoms collected from both the sexes, all age groups, and larger presentations, we come to a genus epidemicus, which is the epidemic minimum in homeopathy, and which caters to the epidemics, pandemics, and even endemicity factors to a certain extent. Now the second factor is now the second factor is that what do we do in cases of people who are suffering from other diseases or other sufferings and are also to be prevented from this genus epidemicus? In that case, we are supposed to work out the individualization of the person. On working it out, we reach to a single medicine, which is the most appropriate medicine for that person. And that medicine is given to that person as an individualized resort to his or her complete personality. And in the course of intermittent treatment, in between, as an intermittent treatment or an intercurrent remedy, we can give the genus epidemicus to respond to the current condition. But we should make sure that the two medicines are neither antidotes nor inimicals. Okay, so this is just a gist of it. Now comes the nosode. So nosode, as we all know, is called the homeopathic vaccination. And the basic ideology of the nosode was, we all know that nosodes basically were contributed to homeopathy by Dr. Herring. Dr. Hahnemann had imbibed it in his literature, in his write-ups, but he did not come up to this word. And Dr. Herring and many, many doctors after him, Lux, Staff, and many, many more, did elaborate work on the nosodes. So nosodes are the homeopathic vaccinations. So the idea from vaccination is we can consider it as the isopathic approach. That is, the causative agent is translated into a dynamic medicine and it is used to prevent the disease or condition. But are the nosodes only used as isopathic medicines? No. So this is unique to homeopathy, that the nosode can be used as an ordinary homeopathic remedy in any case, under any presentation, and needless to have any relation with the causative agent. So again, we understand that the difference between the regular vaccination and homeopathic approach to nosodes is that our nosode definitely is derived from the disease agent, works en masse as a preventive drug, but can also be used as a single remedy for a symptom similar presentation. So this would be sufficient to introduce the preventive concept of homeopathy. I will not go into the history. We all have read that scarlet fever was prevented with belladonna. We all know that Spanish flu had a very good response with Gelsemium bryonia. We have a lot of evidence. The Central Council for Research in Homeopathy has done very good papers on acute encephalitis disease, on dengue, on similar swine flu, such viral infections, and everything is around us. We are still working with it. We have arsenic album as the most appropriate medicine for prevention and even management to a great extent of COVID. And I would like to tell you that I have been fortunate enough to be given a project by Government of India to implement in one of the leading allopathic hospitals of Bhopal, and I have worked on 300 COVID positive cases, hospitalized, moderate, early severe cases, where we have done a placebo controlled study. Very soon we will be coming up with the outcomes and we will be publishing. And let me tell you, it is going to be promising. But now let me share my PowerPoint presentation and come to the actual presentation straight away.
स्लाइड शो कर लो, सब कर लो.
So I hope this is visible. My screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, madam, it is visible.
Okay, okay. So as we all know, that the topic that I have taken for today is redefining preventive healthcare with homeopathy. I will be trying to discuss what is currently in existence, and I will be trying to share my views about making a more defined individual approach to redefining preventive healthcare with homeopathy, and also a community based approach. This will be my motive. Now, if we look at the actual meaning of preventive medicine, let us understand that always prevention has been talked to in terms of medicine. It means that it is something external which is going to be put into the body, and that is going to keep us away from disease or suffering or whatever. Whereas later on, the concept of healthcare was introduced, and it was understood that medicine is not all that is required for preventive ideology. But still there is a long way to go, because the prevention of disease is a numerical calculation. Drug was given to so many people, vaccine was applied to so many people, so much of disinfectant was sprayed, and this much was the result. So it is a mathematical approach. We cannot question the mathematical approach, of course, but let us understand it that the entire concept of preventive medicine comes from a material understanding, and which is explained is in terms of numbers. Now, the second number which we come across is longevity, age. So in today's medical health system, the prolonging of life or increasing the number of years we survive has become a very, very important criteria. And that is why continuous use of medicinal agents to keep the health parameters in a very, very measurable physical normal has become the standard of healthy life. And this is a very, very dangerous and very, very harmful effect on human existence. And this is definitely the factor which is going to bring about irreparable epigenetic changes in the coming human generations. Like we all say that diabetes used to be a genetic disease in the older times, some 40, 50 years back. But today it is no more genetic. Children are becoming obese because of their habits. They are sitting, they are consuming food, and there is no control. And so they are becoming diabetic. So please understand, this concept of only extending life in terms of years is an impact on the entire human genetics and is going to bring about irreparable damages. And diseases which were classified to have deep rooted genetic impacts only are now becoming evident and very widely present in non-genetic relevances. Diabetes is a classical example, and we all know that India is going to be the diabetic capital of the world. Not because we have a lot of people who tend to be diabetic, because we are a very big population. So we are a very big population, so the number of diabetics is very high. So there are so many factors that have to be understood. And there is another thing which is working in the medical world, or rather, we should say, I don't know how much everybody is going to believe in it. I do. That the entire medical machinery is working on a different level. Now, there is a pre diabetic condition which has become a market for the medical industry. So, people have started identifying pre diabetics not to bring them to normo-diabetics, but to keep a watch on them that the moment they become diabetic, they are our potential consumers. So, let us not go into that. But I really want to check on something, that in the ancient times, the lifestyle which was followed was such that people used to convert themselves into normal health status by adapting the normal health practices, which was the first thing that was brought down to traditional systems of India, Ayurveda and Unani. Their colleges were shut down in Kolkata the moment the modern science colleges were bought up and a law was made for them. So we have to understand everything in a very, very broad sense. And when we do it in a broad sense, only then we will be able to bring out a workable plan for our system, that is homeopathy. The third aspect, which has been introduced and is being taken care of and talked about a lot, is promoting physical and mental health and efficiency. So, this is a promising character. But here again, physical health is in terms of regular medical checkups. And regular medical checkups are basically evaluated in terms of the insurance coverages, in terms of physical and measurable parameters. Now, all these things are more measurable in terms of medicine and less in terms of healthcare. So, again, the moment we have a ministry, now we are doing everything for ourselves. So, the urgent need is to translate the concept of preventive healthcare in terms of the homeopathic system of medicine, largely Ayush, but in a narrow sense, if we are talking about homeopathy, we should do it for homeopathy. Now, I am not going to define the health in terms of various understandings, but I would definitely like to differentiate between the two definitions. And the please give me 1 minute, just 1 minute. So let us understand that the major difference between the two definitions of health is that as per the prevalent health practices globally, physical health is number one. And as per homeopathy, mental health is number one. So the primary definition of health is different. And so we have to have a very, very different, a very, very planned ideology of health in homeopathy. And I have definitely, being a homeopath, I have a very, very strong support for the homeopathic definition. We have a lot of definitions. I just picked up one of them. I have a very strong support of homeopathic definition because I firmly believe that people who are physically unhealthy accept their physical ailments, disease, disability, handicap, everything if they are mentally healthy. So, a sound mind helps us to deal with the physical aspect of our health. And so, I have a strong support for the definition of homeopathy. And the first thing which I would like to say is that all the parametric analysis of homeopathic well being, preventive ideology should not be disease based, it should be mental health based. Mental health here does not mean we have to check for how much the person is responding to things, etc. Mental health here means that the mental condition of the patient should not be an obstruction in his or her healthy living, understanding, and coping up with the life's situations. Let me check. So This is my understanding of the mental health concept. Just give me 1 minute. My slide is not sharing further. So now is the second parameter of health. That is the cause of death. Definitely cause of death again comes back to diseases, again comes back to longevity, etc. Now, if we are going to stretch the life of people to n number of years with x number of medicines, what will we get? We will get non-communicable diseases for the patients. And that is why the high income countries or the rich economies have non-communicable diseases at number one, because their mission is to prolong life, to give years, and the value adding to those years definitely becomes secondary, because everything is substituted, everything is given in terms of medicinal substance and not in terms of a routine or a lifestyle management. Now, communicable maternal, neonatal, nutritional diseases are more in low income countries, definitely, because of lack of resources, because of larger populations to answer to, because of environmental factors, because of availability of food, etc. But they have a control, or we can say a good variable of non communicable diseases. And that is why, even till today, the low economies or the so called weaker economies always cope up better with epidemics or conditions which suddenly bring up a challenging downfall in the health situation, because they have an innate system, they have a system of health developed in their body which is not dependent on external substances. And in the high income economies, they are dependent on external substances, so they have to immediately change, immediately modulate the substituents. Accidents definitely form the third cause of death. And how in accidents we have to act, I think I'll be able to address further. Now, if we look at the threats to the global health, these are the same everywhere. The magnitude may vary. And this is not documented by me, this is documented by the international agencies. I have picked it up from reliable sources. First is climate crisis, that is external. So, can we address the climate crisis any way besides strengthening our own immunity? No. So, this is supportive to homeopathy. Now, homeopathic preventive ideology for different climates of the world should be designed in a global manner. It should begin from the top and reach the bottom. In my country, we have places with very heavy rainfall in the northeast. We have dry places like Kutch, Gujarat, Rajasthan. We have humid seaside places like Kerala. So, why not have a climatic preventive ideology and management system for homeopathy? Healthcare delivery, we all know, is variable globally. Healthcare equity is variable. It will never match because the understanding are different. But what can match is the access to treatment. That availability of homeopathic medicines can be ensured at the grassroots level, and dispensing of homeopathic healthcare system at the grassroots level in a preventive ideology as outreach programs has to be taken care of immediately. When it comes to infectious disease prevention, we are already heading forward. We have a Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, which has proved to be effective. And then we have a lot of preventive medicines, drugs, guidelines. We have to have a preparedness for epidemics. Now, this has to be another segment where homeopathic preventive system has to grow. We have to be prepared for the epidemics which are not there but which are expected. And global definition of epidemics these days is that anything which is violating the natural existence would definitely lead to a crisis and will convert into an epidemic. Now, the next threat, as documented by global agencies, is unsafe products, which include food and medicine. So it does not include homeopathic medicine. It is not unsafe product. So we are happy here. But food, definitely, we all have to work on a higher line on the Indian traditional system. We don't have to forget our practices, our belief system, our cooking systems, and our belief in nutritious food which is available in the local market. Now, adolescent safety is a very, very important segment where homeopathy should act. We heard that accidents are the third largest cause of death globally. Now, what is it that homeopathy can contribute in adolescent safety? This is very, very important because homeopathy has got a very, very deeper impact on the mental health of the adolescents, on a number of diseases which are prevalent in the young children and adolescent age group, in exposure to unsafe sexual practices, in controlling accidents, in using wrong, yeah, unsafe cosmetic products for skin, for developing their body, the substituents in the form of proteins, etc., which are toxic to the kidney, leading to blood pressure variations, leading to malfunction diseases of the kidney. This is a very, very important segment where homeopathy should come up with a preventive ideology. And another global threat, which is drug resistance, again is not with homeopathy because we do not have any drugs to which a patient becomes resistant. And the evident fact is that all the homeopathic drugs which were documented by the master are still present and equally effective. Not even one of our drug is obsolete, or not even one generation of drugs we have removed. Now, after looking at all the global threats and finding space for homeopathy, I would like to introduce few points which were mentioned in a document prepared by the World Health Organization. This document was prepared for the Southeast Asian countries by the regional office in 2010, and it is a very, very important document which I don't know the medical councils are following or not. I don't know how much they are implementing it. I don't know how much we are sufficing or justifying them. This is a document which develops the understanding of the concept of preventive and social medicine, community medicine, the curriculum in the undergraduate medical education, which we all are supposed to do. And it is a very, very important document, though it is not very deep, but it is very important because I will highlight only the words, and you can get this document on the internet very easily. If you click a picture, you write it, you will get what actually WHO thinks. Actually, WHO is a body which is looking from a distance. Now, our Southeast Asia office can definitely look at our needs in a better manner. So when they look at our needs, they identify and they have given certain liners. Let me read out. In the mission statement, they have mentioned holistic medical professional. This itself justifies that preventive and social medicine, community medicine, family medicine is not inclined or catering to any particular medical system. It is looking forward to holistic medical professionals. Let me come to the next point, which I want to highlight. You all can read it later on because it's huge. Now, they are explaining that Southeast Asian countries, which are only 11 in number and which are catering to 1/4 of the population of the world. I hope we all have this idea. India and China contributing to a very huge percentage. So, in only 11 countries of the world, we are having 25% of the world's population. So, we have to think globally and act locally. And that is why the local systems, the Ayush systems, are the right systems to answer to the preventive health ideology. It would be very good if we, from homeopathy, from Ayush, revert back to this document of the Southeast Asia Regional Office of WHO with our plan of action and get it approved by our Ayush ministry. And I'm sure if any one of us will write, it will be corrected, it will be, taken care of by a lot of experts, and we'll come up with a plan. Now, they are saying that we have to contribute to the performance of the healthcare system, each one of us, Each healthcare professional, each doctor has to do this. And how do we have to do it? Through planning, intervention, monitoring, and evaluation. The very important point, which is the last point, is that we have to ensure research competencies. And believe me, this is the segment where we homeopaths are actually lacking. We are doing a lot of clinical work. We are doing en masse. If you come to me or you come to any homeopath who has been practicing for a few years, they will say, I have so many patients in whom I have corrected respiratory allergies. I have corrected so many cases of recurrent boils. I have so many cases of psoriasis. I am addressing atopic pediatric dermatitis, but they don't have any authentic literature about it. So the most important thing is documenting your work on a research based strategy. Only then will you be able to contribute to the preventive healthcare segment of this country. Now, if we come to I'm still on the same document. In the curricular strategy, there are many things mentioned, but a very, very important thing which they are giving us as a guideline is that the curriculum of the preventive and social medicine of every system of medicine in every country should be community oriented. Now, this community can be a local group, it can be a smaller group in a village, it can be a structural unit like a village, a block, a district, a state, a region, a country, and all the teachings and learnings should be catered to the local context. We have not done anything on homeopathy on this. This is misfortune. We have not addressed this. There are few studies here and there which are going on. We have a very good and very successful study on malaria in Madhya Pradesh. Since 2016, in the endemic areas of malaria, with a coverage of 23 lakh people, we have done a very big work. It is coming into publication. It is already in the government's notice. But India is made up of thousands of such small units which are endemic to certain conditions. And we are not working on the local context in a community oriented strategy. This is where homeopathy is failing. This is where we are not reaching to the people. We are thinking of our individual patients in our clinics and not addressing this strategy. If we don't do it further, we will be left far behind. So we have to gauge up our efforts in this direction. And now I come to the strategy of prevention. I am finished with that document. I have told you the name of the document. You all can easily avail it on the internet. It is not a very huge document. It is a document which is guiding how the Southeast Asian countries should teach the students of medicine the concept of prevention. Now, in today's times, as I told you, the entire preventive ideology is largely mathematical, that is, which we can calculate in numbers. Why can't we have homeopathic villages which are free of so and so conditions, which have got a control of such presentations, say anemia, which have a control on people reporting to the secondary healthcare centers or tertiary healthcare centers? Why can't we think of parametric analysis in that way? So if we look at the existing system, it is generalized, it is measurable, it is disease based, and mathematical means birth rate, death rate, etc. If we have to translate it in terms of homeopathy, we have to have different parameters because we think in a different way. We can have generalized approaches, but we have to have personalized approaches. We can have physical health parameters, but we have to have mental health parameters. I just want to quote the example of Japan after they had this explosion. So Japan was put some 25 years back by the two explosions, nuclear explosions by United States of America. It is one of the most inhuman act which has been done by any country, and that too on a very, very peace-loving country like Japan. But it already happened. The country was demolished. Now, how did they get over this? And today, they are the leaders in preventive healthcare system of the world. They have the highest longevity in the world with disease-free people. So this is different from the preventive health ideology, which is being imposed via medicines. This is a different healthcare system. This is longevity with minimum or no medication. So they formed a healthcare system based on their local needs, their local practices, local belief system, availability of resources, beliefs of people. Then they had a socio-economic macro analysis of the whole, which doesn't fall into our structure. I mean, that is a part of the economists. But then they had the most important component of their healthcare delivery system, which was the cultural or societal system. That means whatever you grow, you eat. Don't eat what your soil doesn't support. So this is move towards local, move towards cultural. And this is good in many terms, not only because it provides business to our local people, our farmers, but because it is the ethnic food which has good impacts on our body. It is the food which has made us genetically strong. It is supported by our soil. It is the food which contains the nutrients of our soil. So it is much better than supplementing and giving longevity. Then the second thing which led Japan to become the healthiest nation of the world was sanitary behavior. Social interactions was taken up in a very, very positive way. Health became a method of social ties. People came together to help the needy people or health based communities. So social participation to reach to the goals of health was ensured, and thus a country which faced the worst devastation of the times came up to be the healthiest country with longevity, highest longevity, with a drug dependence, minimum drug dependence in its society. So this is an example to be followed. Now I'm writing that homeopathy is the brainchild of an allopath because, and I'm proud of it, because Dr. Hahnemann was not a common man. He was aware of all the practices. There was no vaccine in the times of Dr. Hahnemann. We all know that. There was no vaccine when homeopathy was born. The preventive ideology was different. But there were measures we have read in our text, harmful effects of vaccination, bad effects of vaccination. There were crude measures to find diseases. So imagine a person like Dr. Hahnemann who has designed a system on preventive ideology for the masses, for the people. We have to follow that system. I would quote, I hope I'm not taking much time. Can I talk? Hello?
Yes, madam. Sure, madam. Continue.
Yeah. Okay. So I have to just, I am fond of reading and reading traditional text, the old text. I love to read it. There is a writing of Dr. Hahnemann in 1813, and the article is called Spirit of the Homeopathic Doctrine of Medicine. So it is the spirit. Please read it. Please understand. So a doctor who is guided by a spirit to make people free of sufferings, to give a healthier life to the people, and who says that stop evaluating the physical laws of health. Stop evaluating your health in inorganic substances. Everything, the fundamental power reigns omnipotent. The fundamental power is everywhere. And he was a chemist also, he was a physicist also, he was a pharmacist also. Who else can explain better than him? He says that it suspends the fundamental power, the vital principle suspends all the components of the component parts of the body, all the tendencies of the component parts of the body to obey all the laws of nature, or we can say to maintain them in a condition of sensibility and activity necessary for the preservation of living whole. Can we look into the deeper aspect of what he's saying? He's saying that you don't look at the substance of healing as an individual inorganic substance, or the substance of disease, suffering, or variation in health as an individual inorganic substance. You please understand that the moment life has become a vital principle, a fundamental power, that moment it is governed by all natural principles. And all these natural laws and principles will work together to maintain it in a healthy sensibility and activity necessary to preserve. It means to save you from disease, to heal your body if it is attacked by any kind of suffering, sensibility and activity. Let us all translate only this paragraph of Dr. Henneman into a preventive ideology. Now, I have just a few suggestions to make. My suggestions are based on my experiences, my exposure, the little I have learned from the government sector, from my international exposure, from my gurus, from my patients who are my biggest teachers. What every human or every homeopath as an individual should do right from today and become a milestone in the preventive healthcare system of homeopathy and redefine it. Each one of us should thoroughly record every homeopathic case. It does not mean filling a case paper. It means preserving and recording everything related to your case presentation. It would include the climatic factors, it would include the availability of food, it would include the absence of mental peace, it would include the availability of local services, and how in the long term, after a course of say 1 year, 1.5 year, you will be able to come out with deductions which say that your patients need so and so help or so and so guidance in relation to their sufferings. Every homeopath should be a counselor on maintaining and exciting causes. And for this counseling, we should know what are all the kind of diversions, the causes, which, say, for example, the matter of addiction is very hot these days. How many of us know that the youth is consuming so much of drugs these days? How can we gaze at the appearance of the youth, the young boy or girl who's coming to us? And how can we counsel? This is very important. The next thing which is very important in homeopathy is regular monitoring, which we miss out. And that is why we don't reach to conclusion. And the final most important thing is to translate every work into a research evidence, which should be authentic, which should be unaltered, which should not be modified to get good results. It should be true. And only if it is true will we be able to come out with good results. If we look at a policy matter or a larger perspective, a community perspective, then I would suggest that a system of homeopathy should be designed and developed by the contribution of leading homeopaths globally and also locally, who would look at the prospective and the retrospective, both aspects of susceptibility analysis. That is, for example, I have a huge population of patients from the corporate sector. Now, I have a very good retrospective analysis of the causal factors of sufferings in this sector of people who are working in time with the United States, are awake whole night, sleep whole day, do not consume healthy food, and then come up with gastritis, indigestion, weight gain, etc. So, this alteration in the susceptibility of the individual and the communities, we have to identify communities, has to be done. On this larger scale, we have to identify which conditions can be prevented with homeopathy, to what extent, what should we consider, and what we should leave. Everything cannot be addressed by every medical system. The third, which is the most important point, is that we have to standardize practices like procuring data, preserving information, that has to be standardized. So the unit of healthcare has to take up at least 5 district homeopathic hospitals. And the data should be standardized in a manner that at the end of the year, 1,000 cases can be analyzed. And like the WHO document said, learn globally, but think locally. So we have to connect globally and understand the problem statement. We have to advance our research approaches. We can't always keep answering our research in terms of clinical improvement. We have to give analytical improvement. We have to give biochemical analysis and results. And it is only then, if my patient of psoriasis is improving clinically, I should not be afraid to get a biochemical analysis done. because the person is improving clinically. So definitely there will be a biochemical improvement. So we have to translate our results on the homeopathic principles into a definable parametric system. And last, we have to have a demographic analysis or deductions. That is, why is the larger population getting affected, and what can be done for the larger group of people to find certain conditions. And for achieving this, I'm not going to elaborate much. We will have to have short term and long term goals. And after my lecture, I have a humble submission that every person who has attended this should develop a system of picking up each case, recording each case, translating each case, and analyzing each case, such that after a fixed number of follow ups and a fixed duration of time, every individual homeopathic physician practitioner can give an analytical perspective to his or her efforts. That is all that I had to share. I hope my talk was useful and I could convey, I could justify the topic. Thank you so much, Dr. Verma, Dr. Arvind Verma, sir, everybody, Dr. Pal, sir, everybody who has invited me. I'm very grateful to you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, madam, for the wonderful analytical presentation. It was surely very reflective, the way you told us. I would like to welcome with us, we have our international speakers, Ms. Harola Batista, madam, and Ms. Beth Landa Halpin, madam, from Ontario College of Homeopathic Medicine. It gives us great pleasure to welcome you, madam. Before that, I would like to hand over to our moderator, sir, Dr. V.P. Verma, sir, to give expert comments about the session and also take a few questions that our participants have. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Swami. Well, Dr. Juhi, you have well explained each and everything about well redefined the objectives of the preventive healthcare with homeopathic system. Adding with no source by hearing, sir, and well relating it to isopathic system of medicine. You have done well define that how and what is the aim of preventive healthcare. Very good, you have well defined and well explained the health care with homeopathically, cause of death, precisely, threats of global health, relating to Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, food, drinks, adolescent safety, no doubt. We are not documenting as we are treating a lot of incurables. We must have to do it, and we will follow all the messages whatever you have given in this webinar. And with this end of the session, and I would like to pay my thanks and regards with the question that how will you analyze the susceptibility of a community, Dr. Juhi?
Sir, that's a very nice question. I'm really happy to have that question. See, community here means a group of people who have similar presentation in terms of clinical suffering. Say, for example, Madam is going to talk about ADHD. We have another speaker about the menarchal and the menopausal complaints. So, community analysis would be most effective if we classify or identify the community on the basis of the sufferings. And on the basis of the suffering, we will have a collection of general symptoms which all the patients are presenting. And after the collection of the general symptoms, we will go to the homeopathic perspective, that is, individualized specificity of each case. And in the same lot of people who are suffering from the same disease, and mostly the same age group also, we will have a spectrum of susceptibilities. So this will be the susceptibility analysis. So if I have 25 cases of clinically and biochemically established psoriasis, I have 25 susceptibilities which may form into three groups: low, medium, high. And this would form a very, very generalized and rationalized approach to this kind of patients. And it will be a ready reckoner, a quick method of reaching to the people. That is what I foresee.
Right, Madam Shi. Thank you so much. I salute. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot, Madam, once again for sparing the time for us. Moving ahead for the workshop, I would like to introduce all of you to our speaker, Madam Harola Batista. Well, she's BSc Honors DHMHS Home, is the Dean and Visiting Physician of Academics and Student Affairs at the Ontario College of Homeopathic Medicine. She graduated with honors from the Ontario College of Homeopathic Medicine in 2010. She is passionate about teaching people natural ways of healing to optimize their health. Her passion in the field of healthcare propels her to be a lifelong student herself. Madam, it's a great privilege for us Indians to welcome you on our stage. And I'm sure that the topic that you're going to discuss with us about the women's acutes will be really very enriching. I would also like to introduce you to Madam Beth Linda Halpern. She is the head of homeopathy at the Ontario College of Homeopathic Medicine. She is a homeopath in Toronto and specializes in treating children with ADHD as well as their families. Beth believes that homeopathy combined with other natural approaches to ADHD can help children surmount the limitations of this disorder and can help families with the inevitable stresses and strains of having an ADHD child, resulting in happier, healthier families. Beth has been a homeopath for over 20 years and continues to learn and grow her practice, having positively touched so many lives. She is also an exceptional and passionate educator. Madam, we are really delighted and we welcome you to our stage, and I'm sure that today's topics that you will be teaching us will enrich thousands and thousands of homeopaths, the researchers, the scholars across India and the globe too. As far as I have the data, more than 2,800 people are seeing us live on Facebook, on YouTube, and also on Zoom platform. So I'm sure that your today's message is going to travel to thousands and thousands of people, and I'm sure this is going to be very enriching for all of us. Over to you, Madam.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. We are very excited to be here. How do I share my screen? Tell me. Here we go.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving those rights. Okay, here we are. Today's discussion will be focused on women's acutes, specifically some acute conditions that are obviously predominantly a woman's issues. Of course, there are many health conditions that men and women share, but we're going to be focusing on three that are predominantly or only found in women. Number one is dysmenorrhea, which are painful periods. Number two, cystitis. And number three, mastitis. We want to make sure that we express the fact that these disorders can become chronic. If chronic disorders are not easily addressed, they should be referred to a physician who can, in fact, help the patient who is suffering from these conditions. Let's get started with dysmenorrhea. I'm going to be talking about the physiological aspects of these conditions, and Beth will discuss the homeopathic remedies for treatment. Dysmenorrhea is a very common condition in women who seek hormonal treatment in the form of over-the-counter birth control pills. Oftentimes, women who've had dysmenorrhea in the past, their physicians have told them that it's because they certainly cannot accept their female nature. However, we know that that is simply not correct, and dysmenorrhea is a function of uterine contractions that we'll go into. Dysmenorrhea is a medical term for painful periods. It comes from uterine contractions, and that can be absolutely recurring. They can also be a result from secondary pathologies that's something that we're not going to discuss. It would take far too much time, but usually dysmenorrhea is an imbalance between the hormonal levels of estrogen and progesterone during the menstrual cycle. Usually pains begin before the onset of menses, and they're far more common in women who've not had a pregnancy and delivery. They're felt in the lower abdomen and can be felt as aching pains or pressure, throbbing pains, and cramping pains. They can be referred. They can also come with a lot of other concomitant symptoms, as well as including nausea and vomiting, headaches, dizziness, diarrhea, stomach upset, etc. Secondary dysmenorrhea, as previously mentioned, are a result of other reproductive system disorders. These disorders can include ovarian cysts and pelvic inflammatory disease, uterine fibroids, endometriosis, and all of these conditions can certainly be addressed with homeopathic treatment. The pain of dysmenorrhea is usually heavier at the beginning of the cycle, and as the cycle continues, of course, the pains lessen, and they begin because of uterine contractions. So the uterus contracts because of a hormone-like substance called prostaglandins, and it contracts because there has not been an implantation of an embryo. Therefore, once the uterine contraction begins to contract to release its lining and shed its blood, the vigorous contraction leads to the onset of menses. And if the contractions are too strong, they very briefly cut off the flow of blood to the uterus, which causes pain. Now, the typical treatments for something like dysmenorrhea include over-the-counter pain medications, over-the-counter anti-inflammatories. Women often take warm baths or rest to help them feel better. But homeopathically speaking, we have many solutions. Now, here's a precaution as discussed at the very beginning of this talk. If the pains are unusually severe or last more than 2 to 3 days, professional help should be sought just to rule out any other underlying health condition. If there are acute homeopathic prescriptions that are not bringing on lasting improvement, perhaps the patient should be referred to someone who can help them imminently. Beth, would you like to discuss a few remedies that would be ideal in this condition?
Sure, I'm happy to. Thank you, Harula, and thank you for Dr. Akshay Swami for inviting us. We're very pleased to be here. I just want to briefly talk before I start with the specific remedies, obviously starting with Simasifuga. As you can see, I want to just talk a little bit about the approach that we take at OCHM, Ontario College of Homeopathic Medicine. We're always looking for to go beyond a purely therapeutic approach, especially in addressing any kind of physical pathology, largely because the physical pains and the physical symptoms in something as common as dysmenorrhea are very, very hard to differentiate. And so we look for a larger picture in which to apply what is essentially a therapeutic approach. So we will talk about some of these remedies in a larger context in which we understand their characteristic symptoms, their keynote symptoms, and their areas of affinity when and if applicable. Most of the remedies we're talking about today are going to be highly applicable to women's health conditions, and therefore their area of affinity will almost invariably be women's sexual organs, but if different, I will let you know. We teach thousands and thousands and thousands of remedies at OCHM, and we have various approaches to teaching them. one of the approaches we take when just talking about remedies, not within a family context or thematic context, which is the most common way for us to teach remedies, but when teaching remedies individually, we instruct students to focus in on keynotes, on characteristics, on areas of affinity, so that they're able to quickly zero in on a remedy without getting bogged down in too many specific details, which can always be looked up at a later date. Nobody has the sort of capacity of the computerized mental capacity to know 8,000 plus remedies in that sort of detail. And it's for that reason that we teach students ways to get around that kind of rote learning and zero in. So back to dysmenorrhea, I'm going to start with the remedy simisafuga, often known as Actea racemosa. The most important symptoms to know about simisafuga is that the pains are shooting and radiating. They're labor-like, and they tend to dart from side to side, from hip to hip. There's back pain that radiates down the back of the thighs or the anterior surface of the thighs from the ovaries, as well as upwards. The menses with people needing simisafuga or Actea racemosa for dysmenorrhea almost always have irregular menses, a great intolerance to pain, and the greater the flow, the worse the pain. So this is dysmenorrhea that doesn't start at the very beginning unless the menses start out very heavy, usually starts out with less pain, and as the flow establishes itself, the pain gets worse. Concomitant symptoms or symptoms that come along with a dysmenorrhea in terms of women's health are facial blemishes and pain and tension in the nape of the neck. Important mental symptoms to bear in mind for helping to differentiate this remedy is that there's a lot of sighing, a lot of loquacity, there's a sad and gloomy state, and the patient tends to cry and weep easily. The next remedy we're going to talk about is lachesis or lachesis, depending upon where you've been trained. Lachesis, of course, is one of the kings of the snake kingdom, and a remedy that has an enormous amount of affinity to women's hormonal issues, pretty much across the board. It's a great go-to remedy for menopausal hot flashes, but it's also a very useful remedy for dysmenorrhea. Lachesis is a strongly left-sided remedy, so there's most pains, including the headache that comes with the menstrual cycle, tends to be left-sided. Generally, people who need lachesis have an aversion to wearing tight clothing, especially around the neck and the waist. Women who have intense discomfort and tension before the menstrual period begins and feels much better when the flow is established need lachesis. Lachesis, as a rule, is a remedy that is ameliorated by discharge, and the menstrual flow is a discharge. And if we can understand that general symptom, it really helps us understand lachesis in so many contexts. As you probably know, lachesis is an incredibly loquacious remedy, and we can understand loquacity as another kind of discharge, an emotional discharge. And so again, it all fits in with a larger picture of this remedy. In dysmenorrhea, there's a bearing down sensation in the pelvis, flushes of heat, the headache that we discussed earlier. And the woman needing this remedy is a pressure cooker. She's intense, she's passionate, she's often jealous, and she feels like she's going to explode, and she needs an outlet, both physically and emotionally, to temper that burning and intense explosive passion. Pulsatilla is another one of our polycrest remedies that has an enormous affinity to women's health conditions. Pulsatilla, as we know, has never been well since puberty. And so it's often indicated for dysmenorrhea in women who are just on the cusp of menarche, who are just establishing their menstrual flow, and who are having a lot of emotional difficulties accepting the realities of the change of life here. Pulsatilla is a remedy that is worse for change. And so the onset of menses is an enormous change in a woman's life, and and given the aversion and the difficulty of accepting change, it's not unexpected that pulsatilla is a remedy that would be needed a lot at the early phases of the menstrual life of a woman. Pulsatilla has great sensitivity to most things. They're deeply affected by external impressions. They feel better with cuddles and reassurance. They desire open air, and they're worse for warmth than in a stuffy room. The menstrual cycle is often delayed or suppressed. And when I talk about suppressed, I'm largely talking about the use of the over-the-counter birth control pill. So women who get off the pill, especially if they're interested in getting pregnant, and have a very difficult time reestablishing menstrual cycle, it's almost like they've forced their body through a second phase of puberty. And as we know, pulsatilla has never been well since puberty. Again, the discomfort in pulsatilla is a cramping pain with that bearing down feeling, either with a scanty flow or with a thick, dark, clotted discharge. The symptoms are changeable. The moods are changeable. They go a lot back and forth between a desire for attention and sympathy and sort of a sulky, weepy emotional state. Again, I've mentioned earlier that it's indicated during conditions involving hormonal change, and especially indicated in girls who have recently started having their periods. Belladonna. So belladonna is a much more dynamic remedy than pulsatilla in terms of the rapidity of its onset and the severity and intensity of its symptoms. There's a lot of congestion and sensations of heaviness in the abdomen with bearing down pains. The symptoms are intense. They come and go suddenly, accompanied by a feeling of heat. The menstrual flow is typically bright red and profuse. It may begin too early, or it can be dark, almost black with heavy clots. The pain and cramping is worse from jarring and from touch, as are almost all symptoms that require belladonna. The patient is better for sitting, worse for walking. Every step in walking is like a jar, and again, worse for jarring. A woman who needs this remedy may feel restless and flushed with pulsing or pounding sensation. Eyes are sensitive to light. The irises are often enlarged. Chamomilla. Chamomilla, as we know, is a remedy for people for whom pain is unbearable. So the pains of dysmenorrhea are utterly unbearable to the woman who needs chamomilla. She has extreme sensitivity, anger, and irritability. Menstrual flow is heavy. The blood often looks dark or clotted. Pains are described as labor-like. They're spasmodic, and they often extend from the pelvic area into the thighs and may be worse at night, sounding and looking a lot like cimicifuga. And at this point, this is where we start to look at the mental emotional symptoms to see how to differentiate. Chamomilla has this irritable, cross, ugly behavior. They are impossible to satisfy. That is not the state of a woman needing cimicifuga. Vigorous walking and moving around, a continuous movement alleviates all pains that require chamomilla, and that's certainly true for dysmenorrhea pains. And Bovista, this is the last remedy I want to talk to you about regarding dysmenorrhea. Bovista is the puffball, and you can see a nice picture of Bovista on your screen. So we expect from a woman who needs Bovista to address her dysmenorrhea a feeling of distension and swelling, and they describe a lot of puffiness and bloating and edema during their menstrual cycle. They tend to be awkward and clumsy. There's a strong hemorrhagic tendency with many complaints, including the menses. They feel their pains in the pelvic region with a lot of soreness near the pubic bone. The menstrual flow increases at night and may be even absent during the day. This is an unusual presentation and one which is very useful in choosing this remedy for you. And the other useful symptom is that there's diarrhea that occurs before or during the menstrual cycle. And then I think we're ready to move on. Oops, nope. Harula, I cannot read that slide. So we're going to pass on colophilum. We'll try to fix our slide for you so that you can have that in your notes leave it for that. Colophilum is a remedy that we know for use in labor. There's convulsions during menses, which of course is an extraordinarily strong and significant symptom. There's a feeling of a weight bearing down. The pains tend to be needle-like, and the state of the patient is they're very dull, they're drowsy, they're hard to enliven, they need to lie down a lot. I imagine there's something else in here that I wanted to tell you about, but I don't have any other notes in front of me. So I'm going to pass this over to Harula. We'll move on. Oh, no, we will not move on. We have two more remedies, excuse me. Lilium tigrinum. I love this remedy. So Lilium tigrinum, I always like this thing about the lily and the tiger, the sort of the polarity of behavior that we find within this remedy. For those of you who are not familiar with Lilium tigrinum, the main mental emotional symptom is a lot of tension and expectation, largely from conventional or religious expectations. So there is a lot of denial of sexuality, of sexual desire, of sexual development, and even of sexual function. For young women in particular, for whom talking about their menses is a great source of shame because of the religious culture or the social culture in which they arise, and their inability to balance this tension, this is a great remedy for dysmenorrhea. The pains are bearing down in the pelvis. There's a need to sit down and cross the legs. There's a constant desire to urinate and defecate during the dysmenorrhea pains. And moving on to sepia. Sepia is the very first remedy that we think of for any hormonal female complaint, be it menses, pregnancy, menopause, puberty, postnatal, or after the pill. We discussed this briefly with pulsatilla. Sepia suffers from irritability, feels indifferent to those around her. She desires to be physically active and wants to be left alone, and she's strongly ameliorated for being physically active. That's because there's a general stasis or lack of mobility, both physically and emotionally. And so arousing herself through vigorous exercise passes her through that state of stasis and is ameliorative. Strongly indicated for menses that are late or have been suppressed, worse for dampness, perspiring, and doing housework. And I think that now brings us to the end of the remedies we're going to talk about for dysmenorrhea. Although I guess I keep jumping the gun, because the one last thing I did want to mention to you are mag-phos tissue salts, which I find really, really useful for all women, no matter who they are, in addressing the symptoms of dysmenorrhea. These are the key tissue salts whenever there is a presentation of cramps or spasms or just general pains. And I generally recommend that people throw about 6 or 8 magnesium phos tissue salts into their water bottle, carry it around with them throughout the day, and sip on it as needed to alleviate not severe, but moderate to light pains of dysmenorrhea.
Thank you, Beth. We're going to discuss cystitis next, which is a bladder infection. In women specifically, this tends to be a bigger problem because the urethra is shorter, which makes bacterial infection more likely in women. Many women experience this. It's a normal part of our everyday lives. But what you need to know is that with the urethra being shorter in women than in men, when the infection is in the urethra itself, it's a lower urinary tract infection. And as the infection travels to the ureters and kidneys, it would be called an upper urinary tract infection, which can be a lot more serious in terms of illness. And if the infection goes up to the kidneys, there could be a lot of trouble for which emergency care may be required. Please keep that in mind. Allopathically, cystitis is understood to be the cause of bacteria that goes into the urethra from the surrounding skin. It causes irritation as well as infection. These infections are largely due to the E. coli bacteria. But from a homeopathic perspective, of course, we look at it from a broader perspective, one that, especially if there's recurrent cystitis, one that can be addressed through a chronic case picture. Now, there's a lot of different types of pain when we're talking about cystitis: painful stinging or burning sensation during or after urination. And of course, the remedies that we're going to cover next are indicative of those. There's frequency in urination with an urgency to urinate. There's a heaviness in the bladder. It feels like it's going to fall down. There could be the passing of urine that is dark or cloudy in color. There could certainly be a fever. There could be tenderness in the lower back radiating into the thighs. There could be accompanying symptoms, including vomiting. Now, there's certain increased risks when it comes to the development of such an infection. One could be that the patient is at higher risk with being more sexually active. Using products that are synthetic could also cause such an infection. Diabetics, of course, because there is more sugar circulating in the bloodstream that can encourage bacterial growth. Conditions that would discourage bladder emptying, including kidney stones or pregnancy, could attribute to an infection of this type. Hygienic products that are used by many women or bubble baths can also contribute to cystitis. Some natural remedies to think about when treating this infection could be unsweetened cranberry juice. It could be that we always remember to void our bladder after sexual contact and intercourse. D-mannose is an excellent supplement for those suffering from E. coli infections, and it absolutely helps with urinary tract infections. And rest. Rest is something that we often tend to forget in our busy lives, as we're constantly on the go, but we must remember that all infections require us to rest so that we can feel better. Cantharis is a remedy that Beth will begin this discussion with.
Okay, great, thank you. Am I muted?
Nope.
Okay. I just wanted to, before we start talking about remedies, add that treating cystitis is an incredibly rewarding homeopathic acute intervention because it works, and it works really, really well. I have treated hundreds of women for urinary tract infections, and invariably a large number of these women are ones who have come to me after dose, after course, after course, after course of antibiotics, because the antibiotics do not clear up the urinary tract infections, and they simply return again and again and again. And getting women free of this very painful and distressing situation is very rewarding. I do want to mention that, of course, men do get urinary tract infections, although they are not, as Harula mentioned, nearly as likely to get them as women. The first remedy I want to talk to you about is Cantharis. Cantharis is a remedy that we use for burns, and so it's not surprising that what you'd expect to find in a urinary tract infection that needs Cantharis, an intense burning sensation with urination, and each drop feels like scalding acid as it is passed. The pains go right throughout the bladder neck, the urethra, and they're only temporarily relieved after urination. I'm talking about a matter of seconds. The pain during urination is so severe that the patient also often screams. Even as they're sitting on the toilet, they are screaming in discomfort. There's that sensation that if only they could empty her bladder, she would be relieved. So there's what we call unrelieved urging. There's a frenzied feeling, an urge to pull on the genitals, and in some cases a voluptuous feeling, making you almost want to be sexually aroused. The urine quickly becomes bloody after the onset of symptoms, and you should think of this remedy first when pain is the primary symptom. Moving on to Nux vomica. Nux vomica has a constant urging and full sensation, but only a few unsatisfying drops are passed. Like many symptoms, Nux symptoms, there's this idea of they want to but can't. So it's a great remedy for people who want to vomit but can't, who want to pass a stool but can't, who want to urinate but can't. There's an urge for stool while straining to urinate. The patient who needs Nux vomica for her cystitis is irritable and restless. Sexual excess, excessive coffee, excessive alcohol can be, but it's not always the cause. We know in patients who need Nux vomica, there tends to generally be a lot of ambition, a lot of drive, a lot of determination. But for our purposes of cystitis, think of Nux vomica when frequent urging is the primary and strongest symptom. Pulsatilla, we're back with old pulsatilla. So pulsatilla has a sudden and strong urging with involuntary urination. So the pain and the discomfort increases every moment that the urge to urinate is postponed. The urging begins after just a drop has accumulated. The urine is copious with bloody and a lot of mucus. And of course, we know in many symptoms that disorders that call for pulsatilla that there's a lot of mucus discharge. This is worse before the menses, worse from suppressed menses. We discuss this again. So in other words, post over-the-counter birth control pill. The cystitis has cramps in the lower back and abdomen. There's a dry mouth, yet they're thirstless, and the pains are changeable, irregular, paroxysmal, with spurting, involuntary spurting of urine. Sarsaparilla is a brilliant cystitis remedy when it's indicated. The real indication for sarsaparilla is that the pain is acute, the marked burning pain, but it comes at the very end of urination on the last few drops. There's a chill that spreads from the bladder when urinating. There's retention of urine. The patient can often only urinate it when standing, and you'd be likely to see sort of some sediment or like a sandiness to the urine and sort of bloody drops in those last few drops. But patients who tell you that they don't have a lot of urging, they don't have a lot of other pain until the very last few drops of their passing urine, you go right to sarsaparilla. And sepia, we're back to sepia. Again, we'll find that certain remedies, sepia, pulsatilla, lachesis, are remedies that we come back to again and again and again for women's complaints. Sepia has involuntary urination during the first sleep. So these are women who have a bladder infection, they're uncomfortable, they go to sleep and they wet themselves basically. This is also a really good remedy for chronic cystitis as opposed to acute cystitis. The bearing down sensation in the pelvis that we would expect to see in dysmenorrhea, we also see in cystitis. The urine is thick, it's foul, it also has that red sediment, but of course, it's quite different from sarsaparilla. And the urinary tract infections or the cystitis are worse before the menses, worse for sexual excess, and worse before thunderstorms. So Staphylococcus aureus is known as honeymoon cystitis. And this is for UTIs or urinary tract infections or cystitis that begin after first sexual encounters, after especially vigorous sexual encounters, or after unwanted sexual encounters. So we know that Staphylococcus aureus has elements from suppressed emotion, from abuse. It's also a really good remedy for women who get chronic cystitis after intercourse. And this is a very common symptom. The pains are burning, tearing, worse on urination. Again, involuntary urination, that acrid urine causing burning of the skin around the urethra. Those last symptoms that I just discussed, the burning, the involuntary urination, the sensation of burning around the sexual organs are common symptoms. What's not common is the situation. So in differentiating between, for instance, a remedy like Cantharis and Staphylococcus aureus, the really important question is to ask about, for instance, the etiology of the urinary tract infection. And I've listed for you here some other common remedies that are useful for cystitis. I wasn't sure that we would have the time to go through all of them. So I list them and you can go through them or look them up for more information. Apis, causticum, mercurius, and berberis vulgaris are all very, very useful remedies for cystitis. And I've given you notes here so you can learn about these remedies and differentiate them further. And we are very happy to share our notes and share these slides with anybody who wants them. Just email us and we'll send them your way, and you can keep these notes for your own purposes moving forward.
Mastitis is
mastitis.
Painful swelling of breast tissue, most commonly during breastfeeding. It is a common condition that develops because the milk ducts are blocked, and they're often blocked from trauma to the breast or from an infection that comes into the breast from cracked nipples. The breast tissue becomes swollen and firm to the touch, hot or painful to even the most gentle touch or brush of clothing. There's often red discoloration in some cases, like crack marks radiating away from the nipple. And with this obstruction of ducts comes, obviously, plugged ducts, poor milk drainage due to an improper latch of the baby, especially in the first child of a woman who's breastfeeding, because there's simply not the experience for a child to latch properly. Tongue ties of babies often have a shallow latch and they can cause insufficient drainage, which leads to the breast milk building up and potentially causing an infection or a woman's susceptibility toward an infection. There's interrupted feeding, which also does not drain the breast properly. Restrictive clothing that doesn't allow for the comfort of a woman's breasts will also often lead to this condition. And if there are long periods between a baby nursing, this too can lead to mastitis. So the infection comes in through cracked or clogged milk ducts. and it is an entry point for bacteria that causes this infection. The inflammation can be systemic due to an allergy or local inflammation due to an injury. Those can also lead to the development of mastitis. And there are natural, non-homeopathic therapies that we can reach when it comes to this condition. Rest, of course, we talked about rest in cystitis. It must also be discussed in this condition because women are extremely tired during nursing and this postpartum period of life. When we have our babies who are nursing, we want to nurse them on demand so that we can encourage breastfeeding and encourage the baby to suckle all the milk out of the breast and drain it most appropriately so that the risk of infection is lower. Warm compresses or hot water bottles on the breast will also help to liquefy the milk and get it moving out of the breast completely. Herbal teas on a washcloth can be applied to the breast directly, including chamomile and ginger, slippery elm or burdock root. And massaging of the breast towards the nipple to encourage this extraction of milk is always a good idea. I know that sometimes it is a very painful condition, but we want to loosen those milk ducts and make sure that the milk is flowing properly as to ward away any kind of infection. Cabbage leaves are a very interesting poultice that can be applied for the therapeutic benefits that it offers. Cold cabbage leaves can be applied to the breast directly, and they can be added to a woman's clothing, so inside of her bra, a few times a day, and for long periods of time. It actually helps the milk flow so that infection is lessened. And potatoes as well. A poultice of freshly grated raw potatoes. This is a suggestion by Aviva Ram, who's a medical doctor and herbalist. She has experience that this type of poultice has a great effect on reducing the pain and blocked ducts, as well as the inflammation that comes with mastitis. So that's something to keep in mind. We can certainly apply other therapeutics, not just homeopathy, to deal with an infection of this sort.
Tarula. I just want to throw in a little bit of an editorial comment before we move on to discuss remedies for mastitis. I think that one of the reasons that, homeopathy is so beautifully situated to address these kinds of women's complaints, partially because we have such an enormous tool chest from which to draw in so many ways that we can differentiate the very fine presentation of women's conditions, and rather than treat it crudely with something like an antibiotic, we can zero in on the very particular and individual presentation of a woman's complaint. I think the other thing to bear in mind is that allopathic medicine is, certainly until perhaps 20 years ago, was largely, certainly in the West, dominated by men. And the absolute intensity and veracity of women's health complaints has historically been really overlooked by mainstream medicine that's been male dominated in its treatment. And the severity of how women suffer hasn't really been taken all that seriously by mainstream medicine or conventional medicine until quite recently, when there have been many, many more women entering the allopathic medical field. Homeopathically, we have much more of a tradition of women seeking homeopathy, women delivering homeopathy, and a much more gentle touch in terms of believing the patient and really respecting the patient's symptoms. And while I'm on that little rant, I want to add that one of the things that always concerns me with women I see is their reluctance to rest, Their reluctance to rest when they have an infection like a breast infection or like a urinary tract infection. And this idea that somehow those complaints are less real than an infection anywhere else in the body, and that they should somehow keep going. And I think that's very important for us to bear in mind in treating our patients. So that rant aside, I want to move on to talk about phytolacca. Phytolacca is an extremely important remedy for inflammation and pain of any gland, and it is perhaps the first indicated remedy in almost 50% of mastitis cases. There's a painful swelling of the breast with chills followed by fever. There's a hardness of the breast, which you can differentially diagnose with bryonia, with painful nodes or lumps. There's a tremendous radiating pain radiating from the breast in every direction of the body. The nipples tend to be cracked and sore to the touch. As soon as the baby puts its mouth on the nipple, the pain is intolerable. It's so intense. And these pains, we discussed the radiating pain. It radiates to the underarm or over the entire body. The breasts can abscess, and in so doing, they exude a kind of watery, fetid pus, which creates a crust, and the nipples can appear caked or crusty. Phytolacca, as a remedy, tends to be worse on the right breast. And this is one of the remedies that does really, really well with the cool cabbage leaf poultice that Harula just mentioned. Belladonna, we're back to belladonna, and belladonna, as you know, is brilliant for any infection with a very, very rapid onset, great intensity, very rapid onset. The breasts feel heavy, sore, swollen, and throbbing, just as the bladder or the urethra does in urinary tract infection, in cystitis. You'd expect to see in a breast infection or mastitis that requires belladonna, red streaks radiating from the areola, pulsating pains which come on quickly, worse again on the right side, worse for lying down. The patient's face is red and hot, generally thirstless. And just as we mentioned when talking about cystitis, any jarring of the breasts in this case, so walking, bumping, anything that causes sharp movement or sudden movement makes the pains quite intolerable. Bryonia was briefly mentioned before as a differential diagnosis for hard breasts. So the breasts are like stones. They're really rock hard, and they need to be held tightly for relief. You'll know that in, for instance, a pneumonia or a cough that requires bryonia, the patient clutches their chest to prevent any kind of movement because that movement is intolerable. And likewise, a woman who needs bryonia for her mastitis will wear a snug fitting bra to prevent any kind of movement of the breasts. The breasts are hot and painful, but they're not as red as they are in belladonna. The hardness and the aggravation from any kind of motion is really what you're looking for to differentiate bryonia. As there's this worse any kind of motion I see here written here again, and faintness on rising from the bed. There's a throbbing headache that often accompanies mastitis, a thirst for cold drinks. Often there's constipation, better for cold applications, better for rest, better for stillness, and an extreme irritability. Bryonia, as you well know, is a very, very dry remedy. And so we would expect a bryonia presentation in women who are not drinking enough water while they're breastfeeding, are causing a state of desiccation that runs throughout the body. And then we move into mastitis from there. So heparin sulf is a useful remedy in mastitis when separation is inevitable. So if you believe that you cannot prevent a suppurative process, you give the remedy in a very low potency to encourage a gentle and sort of complete suppurative process. But if you think that suppuration is in the background, give it in a higher potency to prevent the suppuration. There's extreme sensitivity to the least touch in heparin sulf. Mothers absolutely cannot stand for their baby to nurse because the pain is so severe. And they're worse for the cold. They feel freezing cold. Any exposure to a draft makes them feel worse, and they're better for warmth. Crotontiglium is another remedy with hard, inflamed, swollen breasts. And I give it to you with this differential to help you differentiate it between other remedies, because the drawing pain in the nipple extends right through the torso to the back at the level of the shoulder blade with each suckle of the baby, and then again after nursing. And that is an unusual presentation that should bring you immediately to crotontiglium, which is a lesser well-known remedy for treating mastitis. It can have cracked nipples, but then again, most remedies for mastitis can. And finally, I want to bring you to silica. Silica is a remedy for chronic mastitis. Silica tends to be slow to form abscess, but once formed, it's a long and continuous process to get rid of that abscess. It's useful if suppuration has occurred and the abscess does not heal. And as with all symptoms with silica, the patient is chilly, weak, and craves heat. And that brings us to the end of our formal presentation. And Harula and I are here to address or take any questions that might come our way.
Yes, madam, can I ask?
Of course.
Can I ask a question, ma'am?
Please.
First of all, I want to pay the best regards and very good evening to Dr. Batista, ma'am, Batista and Dr. Halpen. Madam?
Yes.
In case of UTI, how symptomatically we assess that it is because of Neisseria infection or infection by E. coli? Symptomatically.
We can't.
And we can go for urine test, no doubt.
That's right. That is the only way.
I want to know that which kind of bacteria is infecting in such kind of lady, then how will I assess that either it is of Neisseria infection or some kind of E. coli?
We really can't make that differential based on symptoms and symptoms alone. However, when there is recurring cystitis, the chances are very, very high that it's an E. coli infection. I've seen one or two cases of women with other kinds of infectious matter that occur repeatedly in the urinary tract, but E. coli is the one that is the most common. And if you use D-mannose in conjunction, get the D-mannose combined with cranberry and then treat it homeopathically. And if the infection clears, you're pretty much have confirmed that it is an E. coli infection. But my assumption with women who don't come with blood work and for whom I don't have a clear idea of what the infectious agent is if it's a recurring UTI, that it is an E. coli infection. And I would say that 90% of the time that is correct.
Thank you, Dr. Halpern, ma'am. And one kind of question is again from my side, just for my students as well as me people. Ma'am, as we all know that homeopathy depends on individuality and PQRS. Even then, I am asking a very silly question that are you people having any group of medicine for women's acute or in case of emergency, ma'am?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you asking if there is a single medicine that we would give?
Are you having, you people are prescribing in that kind of foreign country like Canada? This is just my own, it's my eagerness that you people are prescribing something else in case of acute women's condition or any kind of acute conditions. Are you using any kind of group of medicines? Because allopathic have
No, we're using the medicines that we've presented here. Most of these are acute conditions, and that's one of the reasons that we feel comfortable talking about them, because chronic conditions, if you're suffering with, mastitis, of course, is only particular for a short period in a woman's life. So it's usually an acute condition. Urinary tract infections are acute. There may be acute exasperation of a larger chronic picture, which does need to be addressed by a professional homeopath as a chronic condition. But no, these are the kinds of remedies and the approach that we take and teach and take as practitioners in the acute for dealing with acutes. And yes, we do see a lot of acute presentations. A lot of people come to us because allopathic medicine has proven to them in the past not to really resolve their disorder, even in the acute. And also others have an ideological aversion to doing something like taking repeated courses of antibiotics. I'm not sure if I've successfully answered your question, but I hope so.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I got it.
Thanks a lot, Madam Ms. Harola Batista and Madam Ms. Bethlenda Halpern. Your presentation was really very enriching, since from the start how Madam Harola Batista was telling us about the anatomical structure of the organ, then how the pathology is getting developed, and then she was giving us that how naturopathically we can palliate the case, and the curative approach that you were dealing with our the tools that you were discussing about the homeopathic medicines that we have. It was really very wonderful. And of course, your depiction of every single medicine, be it Phytolacca or be it Brynia or be it Lilium tigrinum, of course, the way you told us about the lily and the tiger, of course, where you told about the bipolar, about the different poles of this medicine. And of course, the practical application, I'm sure that we have a lot of students who are with us, and the practical applications that you have taught us is really great. Madam, we have few questions from our YouTube viewers. They are watching us live. One of the question is from Tarun Pathak. He is a student at our college. He's asking, if there is one patient who complains of irritability, unbearable labor-like pain, but her pain aggravates by moving and walking and ameliorates by having rest, what medicine should be our choice?
Well, when we're talking about a urinary tract infection with concomitant liver pain, I would go for Berber's vulgaris right away.
That's great, madam. That's I hope that that is a great answer to this particular case, since Berberis vulgaris is a very great medicine for urinary tract infections, and of course how the cystitis is being developed and how the infection may go to the other organs also. Madam, we have one more question here from Bhavna Singh. She is asking, how will we differentiate sarsaparilla from apis in cystitis, as in both there is pain at the end of urination?
Right. Apis has pain not exclusively at the end of urination. Sarsaparilla only has pain at the end of urination. Apis will also always be ameliorated by cold applications. There's a feeling of edematous swelling and heaviness in apis that you would not necessarily expect to find in sarsaparilla.
That's really great answer, madam, since you have told us directly the difference between sarsaparilla and apis, that at the end of urination, there will be a significant pain in sarsaparilla, not like in apis. That's really great, madam. We have few more questions. Another question that we are coming is through YouTube live from 1 minute, madam. One more few questions we are having with us in the chat box. Yes, madam. We have, is there any prophylactic homeopathic medicine to decrease the possibility of neural tube defects during pregnancy?
Wow. That question's sort of not really within the scope of this conversation. I understand from the question that this is that the questioner must have a patient in mind who has some concern about neural tube defects. And I would imagine there's got to be some miasmatic history there to suggest that that would be a possibility. And there is no, quick answer that can be given to that. Clearly, miasmatic treatment would be required if there's a reason to suspect that such a thing is likely to happen based on the mother or the father's history, or anything that's been found on an ultrasound. And really that needs professional homeopathic treatment as opposed to sort of a quick answer on a format like this.
Thanks a lot, madam. Again, it's a very beautiful description, since you have told us that we are talking about the prophylactic concept. So, and the topic of today's presentation was acutes, that how we have to manage the acute condition. So it was a wonderful explanation. And of course, you have given the light on the miasmatic theory of that, how we have to individualize the case. And that is how beautifully designed our homeopathy is, and how we could establish the constitutional prescription. And it's really a wonderful presentation, madam. We have some more questions if you have the time.
Yes, we do.
That's really great, madam. Another question is coming from Dr. Shana Khan. She's an MD scholar from this State National Homeopathy College. She's asking if you could please briefly explain the role of leg caninum, leg defloratum, and Asterias rubens in case of breast pathology.
Wow. I would be happy to do that. I would ask Dr. Khan to please write to me at OCHM, and I am more than happy to lay out a short document for her, making that differentiation. But off the top of my head, and in this fast context, I don't feel prepared to do that, but I'm more than happy to answer her question if she could write to me. And if you want to share the answer at a future webinar, please do so.
Thanks a lot, madam. It's so kind of you that you are so active and giving us your valuable time. And again, you are ready to answer and also lay out the important documents for solving this question. Madam, we have another question that is coming from Sugandh. She's asking that, can you please tell about the remedy that can be given when a patient complains of facing the problem of acne just before the onset of menses?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a number of remedies that work. The first one that I would think of would be pulsatilla. We know, though, that generally in the onset of menses, there's a buildup of sebum, which creates a blockage of the pores and then creates acne. I would like to know more about the patient, more about the patient's mental emotional state, and a little bit about the patient's history before I would venture any further remedies. This is not an uncommon presentation. It depends where the acne is on the face. It depends on whether it's cystic acne or more superficial acne. It really depends. There's a lot more questions to be asked before a question like that can be answered. But I would encourage Sugandh to ask the nature of the acne, the sensation of the acne, the coloration of the acne, where on the face the acne is. And those will be useful sort of differential tools. But the most quick answer is pulsatilla, but not across the board. Pulsatilla has largely just a superficial acne on the cheeks, and many women get acne before the menses that does not fit that description.
Thanks a lot, madam, for your wonderful description. You have given us both the answers. First answer is that you have given us, highlighted the acute remedy, that is pulsatilla. Then again, you have highlighted the Bonning-Hussein's concept of totality of symptom. That is, we need the location, we need the sensation, we need the nature. And of course, when we have the complete symptom, then we can go for a perfect remedy. Thanks a lot, madam. Of course, you are again highlighting towards the miasmatic concept of homeopathy for preventing the recurrence as well as giving the cure. Madam, we have one question from Dr. Alok Tiwari. He is asking, how is the role of mother tincture in urinary tract infections and menstrual disorders?
Well, we can use mother tincture, and I am a low potency prescriber as a matter of course. My concern with mother tincture is because it's not potentized, it's not really homeopathic, and it's not diluted, it's not succussed, so it's not potentized. And the possibility of creating proving symptoms is a little bit higher, I feel, in mother tincture. And I also think the complications with other medications, if they exist, is a little bit higher. I am much more inclined to go for a lower potency homeopathic remedy that is you can safely repeat with a certain degree of frequency for a certain amount of time than I would be comfortable doing with mother tincture as a rule. So I'm not sure why somebody would want to use mother tincture as opposed to a low potency remedy, but certainly potentized remedies are free of side effects. They're not toxic, and more frequent repetition is safer than it is with a mother tincture. And I would stay away from other tinctures as a result. That's more herbalism than homeopathy as a rule.
Thanks a lot, madam, again for your wonderful explanation. Since you have told us that if you are going towards mother tinctures, you can also go towards herbalism. And of course, we're grateful to Madam Harola Batista, the way she explained to us about the naturopathic means. And she also told us that it is always better to use whatever the means you have. We should follow in mind the first aphorism, that is, our mission is to restore the sick to health. That is the establishment of the economy of the health, that is the personal well-being, the energy and the enthusiasm is necessary. It has been, madam, really great to have you with us. We have last question coming from Ruby Tiwari on YouTube. She is asking the role of dysmenorrhea of Viburnum opulus. Madam, this will be the last question.
I didn't hear that question. The role of...
Okay, madam. Role of Viburnum opulus medicine in dysmenorrhea.
Viburnum? Is that what she's asking about?
Yes, madam. Viburnum opulus.
The Viburnum opulus. I will take a quick look. Again, that's not something that a remedy that I use on a regular basis. I'm sure. I think that really the appropriate answer to this is there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of remedies that we can use for dysmenorrhea, and you know, I selected, say, 8 or 10, I don't recall exactly the number, of the most common remedies that can be used. There are hundreds of additional remedies, and I would say that the most important thing in understanding these remedies is to know the keynote symptoms, to know the area of affinity, to know the mental emotional state and see if that applies, because so many of the symptoms of dysmenorrhea are common symptoms, and that is the process of differentiating between a viburnum and hundreds of other remedies as well.
Thanks a lot, madam, for explanation. Once again, I would like to thank you for your beautiful presentation to both Madam Harula Batista and Madam Bethlenda Halpin. I would like to say that from the land of greatest democrat who believed in people and worked for the people, strived to become the man of people, and getting the name to be great by the people. I'm thankful to Madam Harula Batista and Madam Bethlenda Halpin for being the real captain for the homeopathy. They are striving for the betterment of homeopathy in order to eradicate thousands and thousands of diseases from the land, and they're always striving to do an act of goodness for humanity and has the spirit to develop one and all. I proudly say, you are the captain, oh my captain, the captain of homeopathy, to lead us, to sail with us into the sphere where we could grow together, we can develop the natural system of healing, and where the energy that heals all the diseases will embark on every single person, and there will be no disease that will not be curable. And of course, we will find out the miasmatic concept, and though the world is sailing through a very pandemic period, but still, I'm sure that I remember a few lines that we are not afraid to die if we are together. That this togetherness of homeopathy, this exchange of ideas that we are learning from you, and we are enriching ourselves. The Indians are getting to know that what the medicines are. And of course, madam, it is very inspiring to all of us, since when we come to know that, yes, homeopathy is such a big tree, which has covered, which has its roots and branches and stem all through the planet Earth. And in every part of the world, wherever we go, the principles of homeopathy shall be always guiding us. And of course, we will follow our ideals, and we will, because we know that authority is, we should have an authority, and our principles are authoritative. And we will also counter the regular side effects of all the different medicines. Now I would like to ask some words from Honorable Professor Dr. S.S. Pal, sir. He is the HRE of Organon of Medicine. He is a very dynamic personality. Sir, kindly unmute yourself, sir. You're muted, sir. Kindly unmute yourself, sir. Sir, you're muted, sir. Kindly unmute, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Ashayji. And I have seen Dr. Bates and Dr. Harula is looking very pretty from India. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining.
You have thrown 6, sir.
Thank you so much for sharing this knowledge, and hope that you keep sharing this knowledge always, and welcome from SNHSMC always in the future in such type of the webinar. So thank you so much, and your topic is very, very deep, informative, and presentation is very excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Bates and Dr. Harula, and also Dr. Ashayji.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. Now, I would like to have a few words from Dr. V.P. Verma, sir. He's a very energetic personality, very motivating and a guiding professor. Sir, a few words from you would be really great to conclude today's session. Sir,
Thank
please,
you,
sir.
Dr. Swami, sir. You have told everything my side. Even then, I would like to say that all my respected dignitaries, I feel really so proud to being with such kind of learned friends. I sincerely appreciate the efforts you made for this webinar, and thank you for enlightening us with your knowledge. I am hoping in future that we will again meet in some other kind of platform. Always we welcomes to you people. And in last, I would like to pay my very, very thanks to my webinar teams, like Professor Arvind Verma sir is the principal of National Homeopathic Medical College, Dr. S.S. Pal sir, Dr. Amit Nayak sir, Dr. Swami sir, and all my UGs and PGs students. Thanks a lot. Bye bye. Sayonara. Das vidaniya. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Thanks a lot, madam. Bye, madam.